All right, so today we're going to wrap up Plato and move on to moral nihilism. So we're going to fast forward in time quite a bit. But the seeds of moral nihilism really are kind of there in what Plato is saying. Right? If the common view is as he claims it to be, if humanity really does suck that bad, if we really are awful and we're just pretending to be ethical for the results, rewards, or something along those lines, then it's not that huge of a leap to say, then why bother with it at all? Morality and ethics, who needs it? Then it'd be much better off if I lived my life as if I had a ring of Gyges. And so, in some ways, that's sort of going to be what moral nihilism is. But Plato wants to further make his point about this common view, this common understanding of ethics. So he has a second example. So remember, the first example is the ring of Gyges. The second example, he says, let's imagine the best of all men with regards to ethics. Right? He truly is ethical, the most ethical, possibly ever. And yet, everyone else thinks he's the worst. Everyone else thinks he's the most unethical person ever. That every choice he makes that he thinks is ethical is actually unethical. How long would that person continue to act in the way that they think is ethical? Right? Peer pressure matters, right? This reinforcement from others matters to us. When thinking about that, I think about Spider-Man. Not to get too comic book geeky here, but Spider-Man's kind of a popular enough character that most folks are at least somewhat familiar with the story of who is Spider-Man, right? And my daughter, my 14-year-old, not my 5-year-old, last year for school, I believe the assignment was something along the lines of choose a comic book character and explain and then give that hero's greatest villain and explain why it's the greatest villain. So my daughter chose Spider-Man as the hero. And the villain, and at first I was skeptical, but she convinced me. And it has to do with what we're talking about right here. Spider-Man's greatest villain, J. Jonah Jameson. Because there's that seed of doubt, right? Spider-Man is a teenager, so he's already trying to find himself, figure out his identity. He's a bit geeky and awkward and weird already before he gets bitten by the spider, right? So that's added on to it, right? This was, the original Spider-Man stories were being written during the late 1960s, where the world seemed to be changing very rapidly, and therefore people trying to find their place in it was a little more difficult in the generation gaps and so on and so forth of the 60s in the United States. It was the age of anxiety. And so young people especially were very anxious about what's going to happen next, right? Are things actually going to improve and get better? What's my place in it? And Spider-Man speaks to all of that. And so Spider-Man makes these decisions, these ethical choices that he thinks are ethical, but he's not sure, because he's not sure of anything. There's only one decision he's ever made that he was sure of, and it turns out in hindsight, he was wrong about that. So even looking back on events, he's not sure he actually made right choices. And then you've got this newspaper man who, if it were written today, would probably be some video blogger type person or something, who's playing on this seed of doubt that's there and telling everyone that Spider-Man is actually the worst. He's not the best, he's the worst. Which then gets Spider-Man thinking, whoa, maybe he's right, maybe I am the worst. Maybe every choice I've made actually has been wrong. And so there's also the fellow New Yorkers who aren't quite sure, right? Sometimes they're kind of lean more towards the belief of J. Jonah Jameson. Sometimes they lean more towards, no, he really is a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. He's really just trying to help us out. He's trying to do his part. It's complicated. But many times throughout the past 60 years of Spider-Man stories, Spider-Man has walked away and been like, I'm done. That this much power is too much responsibility. I can't handle it. I just want to be normal. I want to get married, have kids, whatever normal looks like. That's what I want. I don't want to be Spider-Man. Invariably, however, he comes back. Even the Miles Morales version of Spider-Man has walked away, Spider-Man no more, and come back because of this power and responsibility thing. Which is interesting in light of what we talked about with regards to the Ring of Gyges. With that kind of power, is it actually complete freedom? Or is there actually great responsibility then to do ethical things if you have that kind of power? That's something to consider. But with regards to this thought experiment of Plato, the second one, not the Ring of Gyges, the second one, the best of all men thought to be the worst. Let's stop thinking about ethics for a moment. Let's have something much more mundane and not quite as heavy as ethics. Let's say that you have started playing piano. And you enjoy playing the piano. You didn't think you would, but you do. You enjoy playing it. And you are getting better. There are a few songs that you're improving on, you're working on, you're getting better. And you're enjoying it so much that there are some times when your friends are like, hey, can you come out with us? You want to hang out? And you're like, I think I'll just stay in tonight. The reason you're staying in, you don't tell your friends this, but the reason you're staying in is because you want to play piano some more. Not that you're always ditching your friends, but sometimes you're prioritizing piano playing and practice over your friends. You're not taking lessons or anything. You're not that serious about it. But you're enjoying it and having fun and getting better, you think. So a few months pass, and of course they're your friends and your family, so you want to share what you've been up to with them, just as you would want them to share what they've been up to with you. That's what being a friend, being family means, right? And so you invite them over for, a get-together, just hanging out, like people used to do back in the olden days of February. And you're hanging out and having fun. You're like, hey guys, I remember when I told you I didn't want to go out, I just want to stay in. Here's why, because I've been playing piano and I'm really liking it. And so I'd like to play a couple songs for you on the piano. And they're like, oh great. So everyone sits down, you sit down at the piano and you play your one or two songs. And you're thinking, man, I totally nailed it. That's the best I've ever played those songs. This is great. Not that you're trying to show off for your friends or anything along those lines, but you're just like, yeah, that's what I've been up to. There it is, right? And your friends, rather than giving you words of encouragement, do the exact opposite and give you nothing but words of discouragement. That was awful. Why have you been wasting your time doing that? It's so bad that it feels like my ears are bleeding. We really think you should stop. We may need to get the piano out of your house so as not to encourage this anymore, because you've been literally wasting your time. You're not a piano player, and I don't know where you started, but surely that could not have been any better than where you started. In fact, it may have been worse than wherever you started. It's terrible. Plato wonders, how long would it be until you played the piano again? Most folks would probably never play again, because part of the enjoyment that they derive from the playing is the thinking that they're, getting to be at least okay. Again, they're not going to be on tour or anything along those lines, but they're getting to be okay. They can play a song or two pretty well. And now to have that ripped out from under them by the people who care about them the most, and really, who else would be honest with you if not the people that you care about the most? So man, I guess I must have been wrong. I really was wasting my time. Or as my mother, no joke, my mother did once say to me, son, if at first you don't succeed, stop and try something you might be better at. And we all have different gifts, talents, abilities. Maybe this one isn't yours, right? My mother was also very upfront with me about my lack of artistic ability. I was in, I think, the second grade, it may have been. I drew a picture for my mom, went home, gave it to her. Remember, single parent family, only child, so it was just the two of us, although I did spend a lot of time with my grandparents. So took it home and I was like, look, Mom. She's like, oh, honey, this is such a great dog. I'm like, Mom, it was supposed to be a turtle. Or maybe it was vice versa. It was something about a dog and a turtle. I forget which one I thought I'd drawn and which one she thought I'd drawn. We can get into the deep philosophy of artistic interpretation. That's for intro to philosophy, not intro to ethics. And she said, oh, honey, you're just not a very good artist. Right? which some of you may think, oh man, how harsh and how awful for a parent to say that. Others of you are like, oh yeah, at least Dr. Shroppy didn't waste his time trying to draw more, right? Instead he retreated to a library and read a bunch of books, or whatever it is Shroppy does, right? I didn't have delusions of ever going to CCAD for anything, right? I'm not gonna be a world-renowned painter or sculptor or drawer or illustrator, none of that stuff. Like, okay, now I know, and I can move on and try something else instead, right? Same with your friends. They're not trying to be harsh. They're not trying to be buzzkills or anything along those lines. They're trying to help you by letting you know, hey, this piano thing ain't for you. Try something else. Now, there may be some of you who are like, no, man, I'd keep playing. I'd try to prove to them that I was right and they were wrong. And in an odd way, that's sort of the connection with moral nihilism. Now, when I'm talking about moral nihilism, I'm not talking about necessarily grander philosophical nihilism. Okay? Nihilism, generally speaking, is nothingism. It comes from nihil, meaning nothing. Nothingism. There's no purpose, no value, no nothing. You're just here, you live, and whatever you do, and whatever you don't, and then eventually you die. The end. Okay. Probably the best example that I can give you of a nihilist would be Rick from Rick and Morty. Super intelligent, he's so smart, he knows that nothing has purpose and meaning and value, at least throughout the first season to season and a half. Shroppy would contend, however, about halfway through season 2, it becomes apparent that Rick does value things. He's actually not a nihilist. Shroppy wonders if that's the creator of the show, indicating, look, nihilism can only take you so far. Then you've got to start to value something. Okay? So that's nihilism, generally speaking. With regards to moral nihilism, the idea is morals and ethics have no value, have no purpose, have no meaning. That it's, at best, arbitrary stuff made up by us. And at worst, it's arbitrary stuff made up by us. Right? Plato says to be ethical, not act ethically, to be ethical is grievous, and it's toilsome, it's hard work. Which is why Plato then goes on to say, and so if you never get any rewards, people are going to stop and give up. Right? You need some type of positive reinforcement here to keep on with this grievous and toilsome act. Grievous and toilsome actions, not act, not pretending. The grievous and toilsome actions, right, which indicate that you actually are ethical. It's hard work. Remember, to do injustice is good. To suffer injustice is evil. So we compromise with these contracts and so forth, these laws. It's hard work. I'm reminded of a Teen Titans Go episode, because obviously Shroppy watches way too much television. In this Teen Titans Go episode, the beginning, the Teen Titans, the good guys, are hanging out with cats. They're just relaxing. They're petting cats. They're playing. It's a great day. Until the alarm goes off, indicating that the bad guys are up to something. So the good guys then have to drop what they're doing to go stop the bad guys. Wait. The good guys are like, hold on a second. We're the good guys, and yet we're the ones who have to compromise here. The bad guys get to do whatever they want. That's freedom there. We, the good guys, because we're being good, have a lack of freedom. Our lives are dictated by what the bad guys choose to do. Forget that. Let's be bad guys. It's going to be more freeing. It's going to be more fun. This Ring of Gaiji stuff we've talked about. It's going to be great. If you're an actor or an actress, imagine which role is more fun to play. The hero or the villain? Most great literature, the villain is far more interesting than the hero. Especially if the villain has like some type of redemption story or something along those lines. The hero becomes interesting when they become the villain. That's when they become interesting. Right? So, how long would this person really stand fast in justice? How long would they really go back to playing the piano again? so sure. So the nihilist, the moral nihilist, is like, so don't bother with it. Ethics, why bother? Don't. You get rid of the grievous and toilsome stuff, and you get to have fun and be free. Yeah, sign me up. Right? Now, some will claim, look, without ethics or morality or laws of any kind, we're going to end up with the purge, which is not a comedy, by the way. Right? No laws for 24 hours, chaos ensues, not order. Now look at what people would do with that kind of power and that kind of freedom. Although, we could also look at some place like the Netherlands, which does not really have a lot of laws. There are some, but not a lot. It's not the purge over there. Just some things to consider here. Now, when I'm speaking about moral nihilism, I'll primarily be talking about referencing Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche makes it clear he is not a nihilist, and really he's not even an ethical nihilist, but what he does with regards to morality will look like moral nihilism to most of us, to most folks, because he's clear that his intention is not to get rid of all values. His intention is to reverse or invert traditional values. By traditional values here, he means primarily the Judeo-Christian ethic, okay? Whatever that might mean. He thinks that holds winners back. It holds back greatness, these rules and this public opinion and so on and so forth. Because Nietzsche kind of shares the skepticism of most folks that Plato has. That really, when it comes down to it, and this is 21st century language, this is not Nietzsche's own words. Nietzsche's writing in the late 1800s. He's using words such as the herd, or the they, das Man, and Übermensch, the overman, the overlord, the superman, something along those lines. Okay, so those are the two. Late 20th century, early 21st century parlance and colloquialisms, but we want to talk about basically losers and winners. Ayn Rand will talk about creators and parasites to kind of get at the same idea here. Right? So we've got winners, we've got losers. And this isn't really necessarily a decision that is made, right? No one chooses loserdom. Almost no one chooses loserdom. And we would all, of course, choose winning if we could. But things like natural abilities sort of get in the way of that. There are some who are born to be winners, and some are born to be losers. The tragedy of all of this is that some born winners do choose loserdom. They choose loserdom by buying in to what society says, by buying into the herd mentality, or the herd conscience, or the herd morality, these traditional Judeo-Christian values that we care about what people think. The winner keeps playing the piano to prove his friends wrong. The loser is like, I guess I must be the one that's wrong here. I'm going to listen to the rest of society. They're right. I must be wrong. I had delusions of grandeur. I didn't hear what I thought I heard, something along those lines. I must be the one that's crazy. And when he's talking about winners and losers here, it's a mentality more than anything else. Winners don't think about if I win. They think about when I win. They don't think about if I lose. The when I win is inevitable for the winner mentality, for the Übermensch. They know that they are great. They know that they can succeed. They know that in order to do so, they have to break the rules and the laws, at least of their field. That's what a genius does. A genius takes the rules, let's say of music, takes the rules of music, breaks them all, and does so successfully. That's greatness. If you follow all of the rules, no one cares. You get forgotten. There's no legacy there. When we're talking about winners, In the Nietzschean sense, we're talking about greatness, we're talking about success, we're talking about leaving a legacy. We're talking about you broke the rules successfully and therefore established new rules for everyone else to follow along behind you. That's what progress is. Progress is these strong individuals dragging the rest of us kicking and screaming into the future. Insight, foresight, genius, artist. And these geniuses can be found in any walk of life. Nietzsche is going to primarily focus on talking about the artists. And even today, it seems that the genius artists are the ones that all of us sort of accept as a bit weird, right? The genius businessman we may not accept as weird in the same way that we would the genius musician or artist, right? They break the laws of society's ethics, right? They don't necessarily break legal laws, but they kind of do their own thing and the rest of us accept it, right? Musical geniuses such as Prince, right, who paraded on stage. He's a man, but he paraded on stage in stockings and high heels, which then led to his hip problems, which led to his painkiller addiction, which then led to his death ultimately. But Prince also would sometimes in his songs play the role of the traditional feminine rather than masculine. In other songs, he played masculine instead of the feminine. He would blur these lines. He perpetuated the myth. It's a myth, but he perpetuated the myth that he was biracial. Again, this blurring of lines, the breaking of these established segments, or these established lines, and these established roles and rules. Breaking of all of that. And if you listen to his music, especially at the time, it was really hard to classify. It wasn't really rock, but there were rock elements. It wasn't really R&B, but there were R&B elements. It wasn't really rap, but there were rap elements. Not really jazz, but there were jazz elements. It's sort of this blending together of all of these genres of music in a successful way. Other people have tried to do the same thing and failed miserably. Why? Because they're not geniuses. They didn't do it the right way. Anybody can break the rules and break the laws. Only the winners, only the greats can do so successfully. The rest of us will fail. Some of us know that we would fail. That's why we don't bother breaking the rules. Because we don't think about when we win. We would think, oh my goodness, what if I lost? And so we think in terms of at least rather than at most. So think about a job that you've had. If there's a job description, you know if you follow those rules, you at least get paid. Right? If I at least show up on time and I work my hours, and by working my hours that means this and this and this and this and this, I don't have to go above and beyond. That's nonsense. But this is the minimum that I have to accomplish in order to receive my paycheck. I have students who will sometimes ask, what do I have to do to pass the class? Why such low expectations? Why not expect more than just passing the class? Rarely do I have a student come to me and say, what do I need to do to earn an A in here? Instead, it's what do I need to do to pass? Pass is the bare minimum. A is the best you can do. Heck, even better than A might be, what do I need to do to replace you? Right? Forget the A. I'm aiming even higher than A. Right? I'm gunning for your job or something along those lines, right? You make being an adjunct look so glorious that I want that. Right? But it's at most or at least. For a winner, the job description is too limiting. Right? The winner just wants, what's the task you want accomplished? Give me the mission and then get the heck out of my way and let me do it. Let me do it my way. Don't question my methods. Don't question how I'm going about doing it. Don't micromanage. Just give me the end goal that you have in mind and let me do it. That's winner think. Loser think, okay, give me the step by step so I know exactly what to do, so I can meet expectations, not exceed them, but meet expectations so I can get my paycheck. Because here's the thing, without that description, without that step-by-step process, you could fail. You could succeed gloriously or you could fail. The loser's so afraid of failure they don't try. And remember, this fear thing goes back to what Plato was talking about. Right? I have a fear that you all are going to try to take my stuff, so I enter into these contracts and agreements with you guys. Fear is the driving force behind all of this. Because I know I'm not bigger, stronger, faster, smarter. Nietzsche, however, being a social Darwinist, wants to say, hold on a second. This smarter, faster, stronger should be rewarded. They should be able to succeed. They should be able to rise above everyone else, the average of the herd. That's what success is. It should be rewarded. And in olden times, it was. This is quoting Nietzsche now. This is from his text, Beyond Good and Evil. So that's really what he's wanting to do, is he wants to move beyond the distinctions between good and evil, and we'll talk about what he means by that here in just a minute. During the longest part of human history, so-called prehistorical times, or really pre-social contract times, the value or disvalue of an action was derived from its consequences. Either it was successful or it wasn't. Either it worked or it didn't. Either you won or you lost. Pretty straightforward and simple. And here are some of the attributes that lend themselves towards winning and success. Hubris, arrogance, self-confidence, selfishness, all of the things that the losers think are evil. Because here's the thing, there are way more losers than there are winners. Here's some other attributes of the winner, and this may sound like a commercial to some of you. Winners are independent, strong, proud. Now, it sounds a lot like a commercial I heard when I was growing up. Those are the same attributes as typically associated with the United States Marines. The few, the strong, the proud, the Marines. In the Marines, at least given the literature of the Marines, other U.S. armed services will disagree with this, but the Marines at least claim to be on the front lines. They're the first out there. They're the ones in the trenches, doing the majority of the fighting. And what they really don't want is a whole list of rules of engagement. What they want is a mission that they are expected to accomplish, and then for everyone else to get the heck out of their way and let them do it. This is the mentality of the Marines, the Army, the Navy. They're about success. They're about winning. They're about accomplishing the task. Don't micromanage me. And what's even worse than micromanaging from the top, as awful as that is having some type of moralistic journalist nearby who wants to tell me about, oh no, now do you really think it's ethical to do that? I don't know, is that the most ethical choice? You know what? Be quiet. Let me do what I do. Because by me doing what I do, accomplishing these tasks and these goals and these missions, that's what allows you, moralistic journalist, the freedom to then question the methods that I used to accomplish this task. Just stand in my way and be quiet. Let me do what I do. Let me succeed. Let me win. Really, the moralistic journalist is a loser trying to bring the guy down. So think about this. Think about this scenario. So me, ethics professor. Whoop-de-doo, okay? My brother-in-law is, I think he's 15 years in the U.S. Army now. And I don't know, he's some high-ranking person. If there's one seat left on the last manned mission to Mars, and for whatever reason, the two candidates that are left are me and my brother-in-law, Who should we send? Guy who's been teaching ethics for 10 years? Guy who's been in the military for comparable amount of time, 12, 15 years. I won't be offended because I know the right answer too. The right answer is you send my brother-in-law, not me. Why? Because you don't know what you're going to find when you get there. When Australia was being colonized, it was called Pommy. It wasn't professors of Mother England. It was the prisoners of Mother England. Because the prisoners had already demonstrated, look, we're not really worried about rules and laws and stuff. We're going to do whatever we want to do to succeed and to get ahead. Which is exactly the mentality that you want if you're England and you're trying to go colonize / conquer / take over this other place. You want somebody who's going to go in there and do whatever is necessary to accomplish that task and that goal. You don't know what you're going to find down there. Australia is weird, man. They have huge rats with pockets hopping around. Kangaroos. But that's weird, man. If you're from England, you ain't never seen something like a kangaroo. Teeny little teddy bears that eat nothing but eucalyptus all day. That's weird, man. Like, Australia is just a weird place if you're coming from England. If you send a professor, they're going to be wondering now, wait, no, is it ethical to do this? Is it ethical to do this? If you send me to Mars, and we were across, let's say there is some life there, I'm going to try to engage in a conversation with it, even though I don't know the language, be like, let's see, is it okay to eat this thing? Or should we give it a right to vote? Right? Is it equal to us, superior to us, inferior to us? My brother-in-law's like, shoot first, ask questions later, man. We're here to accomplish a task. We can't be worried about the rights and so forth of this thing. Now, I'm not saying that my brother-in-law is a jerk or anything along those lines. I'm painting huge brushstrokes here to make a point. Okay, and I'm making a point on behalf of Nietzsche. So this may or may not be Dr. Schrappy's thoughts at all. This is what Dr. Schrappy is choosing to explain Nietzsche to you and the idea of moral nihilism. We're here to accomplish a goal. We can ask questions like what you're wanting to ask later, after the fact. A Few Good Men, the movie, makes a great point of this as well, right? That you have the Jack Nicholson character who does whatever needs to be done. And the Tom Cruise character comes along and starts judging the actions of this fellow. Jack Nicholson's like, look, man, you can't handle the truth. You can't handle what it's like to be me, okay? Did I order the code red? Yes, I ordered the code red, and you're welcome. I did it because it needed to be done. I've got the guts enough to do it. I've got the hubris, the arrogance, the self-confidence, the selfishness enough to do what needs to be done, while you're sitting over here pontificating and moralizing about everything. And then nothing gets done. You have the freedom that you enjoy because I'm on that wall, ordering things like code reds. You're able to enjoy the questioning of my ethics because I act unethically. Is in essence what he's saying. Right? That ethics can come along later. And that's exactly what Nietzsche's saying. Look, when we were really making progress as humanity, the wheel and fire and stuff like that, we didn't have a whole bunch of people running around, oh no, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't try that, you shouldn't. That comes along later. One of the stories Nietzsche likes to talk about is the story of Prometheus. Prometheus stole fire from the gods. You know why? Because he had this internal compulsion, this internal drive. He knew he was a winner. He knew he would succeed. He had to do it. He couldn't turn it off. And yet all the humans are like, no, please don't, because what if you fail? Then we're all going to get punished. They're afraid. Winners don't live in fear. Losers live in fear. And there are far more losers than there are winners. So the losers then look at the winners and quite frankly get jealous. So that's when we enter the moral time period that Nietzsche wants to talk about here. In the last 10,000 years or so. What's happened then is these losers have looked at the winners, gotten jealous, and to some extent also somewhat self-loathing. And they've decided to create the concept of God. Create the concept of eternity. Create the concepts of heaven and hell. Because isn't it a little more than coincidental, says Nietzsche, that these losers that far outnumber the winners, all of the things that their God loves is all of the things that make you an unsuccessful loser. Self-sacrifice, humility, and all of that. And all of the things that God then deems good, and all of the things that God thinks are evil, just happen to be all the things that actually make you successful. In the Christian Bible, it talks about the last, the losers, shall in the end finish first. So they're only seeming to be losers. Really, they'll be the winners in the end, in all of eternity. And the first, the winners here and now, shall be last. They'll really be punished forever in hell, and so on and so forth. Nietzsche's like, nonsense. This is a way for losers to bring the winners down to their level. Because losers fear the winners. Again, think of the Ring of Gyges. Losers know what they would do if they had that kind of power. And so they're afraid of what the winners are going to do with their kind of power. With that success. Furthermore, Nietzsche is skeptical of this moral time period because as he sees it at least, and we'll talk more about this later on, as he sees it, this Judeo-Christian ethic, which is invented by the losers, who, by the way, equate themselves to sheep and a herd and flocks and following good shepherds and safety and numbers and all of that, because it's safer to be a loser. Winners risk all the time. They risk failure, and yet they do it anyway. So anyway, these losers then also want to talk about God knowing the intentions of their heart. And so it gets away from the actual results of a situation, successful, unsuccessful. Instead, let's talk about intentions. What did you mean, right? You didn't intend to hurt grandma's feelings, so maybe you're off the hook. Nietzsche again calls foul. And he says, look, we don't know our own intentions. We do stuff because we're compelled to do so, and then we rationalize it later and try to justify it later. We don't know our intentions. Nietzsche here, is writing about 20 years prior to Freud, but is anticipating what Freud's talking about. Freud says consciousness is but a tip of the iceberg. Right? There's so much subconscious and unconscious stuff going on that we're not aware of. Nietzsche agrees. Let's talk about these drives, these impulses, these compulsions. That's the reason we act the way that we do. We almost can't help it. And yet the losers, we're going to talk about, no, you should try to help it. You should say no to those drives sometimes. Say no to yourself. Live for others instead. And so he says, Nietzsche again, says, look, haven't we reached a point in history where we can get rid of all that nonsense? And in other writings, he says, look, God's dead and we've killed him. God may have been a nice placeholder for all the things we couldn't understand yet. The science can explain a lot. Whatever it hasn't explained yet, it will be able to explain later. Stephen Hawking uses the word God as this placeholder as well. And so we've killed him. We've killed the concept of God, and this is cause for celebration. We're finally free. We don't have this eternal paternal figure watching over us, telling us all the stuff that we should and shouldn't be doing. We're free. We do have a ring of Gyges. Freedom. To actually succeed. To strive. Right? And this is something that greats already understand. Greats compete with history. LeBron James famously said, well, maybe it's not that famous anymore, but in an article, an interview, I forget who it was with, said, look, I'm chasing a ghost who played in Chicago in War Number 23. That's who LeBron's comparing himself to. He doesn't compare himself to KD or Steph or whomever else, Kawhi, whomever. He's comparing himself to Michael Jordan, and that's it. The greatest of all time. That's what LeBron wants to be. And so because of that then, because of this drive and this impulse and this compulsion to be the most successful ever, to be the greatest, you can't be happy either. That there really does seem to be this contrast between successful and happy. The moment LeBron James becomes content, he's not striving to get better anymore. The moment that he's content, he's not working on this part of his game, or this part of his game, or this part of his game. His chase for greatness is over. Tom Brady doesn't eat ice cream. Instead, he eats kale. To Dr. Shrapi, that's ridiculous. Because what winners do to succeed is always going to seem crazy and ridiculous to losers. Sacrifices that I'm not willing to make. Ice cream's delicious. Kale is not. Give me the ice cream. But not Tom. Because he wants to be the greatest. And even if he already is, he can't think that he is, or he'll become content and happy. He's got to still have a chip on his shoulder. He's still got to be chasing something. Chasing success, chasing greatest. Chasing. That's what drives you forward. That's what greats understand. That's what winners understand. Back to the ice cream example. Nietzsche elsewhere, and this is still in Beyond Good and Evil. There's no other way. The feelings of devotion, self-sacrifice for one's neighbor, the whole morality of self-denial must be questioned mercilessly and taken to court. Right? We never stop to question whether we should bother with morality. We presumed, Nietzsche thinks, up until the 1880s when he's writing this, we've presumed that morality good. We should all want to be better, more ethical people. Nietzsche's like, but why? Why? Especially when you consider this. And this again ties back to Plato. Nietzsche says, there is no doubt at all that the evil and unhappy are more favored when it comes to the discovery of certain parts of truth, and that their probability of their success here is greater. And here is all there is. The best that you can hope for, right? The soul's not immortal. That's nonsense loser talk, okay? To help themselves feel better about their lives. The reality is, the best you can hope for is leaving a legacy of greatness. That's it. That's the best you can hope for. That's immortality. We still go to the art museum to see paintings by Van Gogh and Picasso. We still listen to Beethoven and Mozart. We still read Shakespeare and Cervantes. That's greatness, man. That's greatness. Success or happy. There's also certain parts of truth. Losers are afraid of the truth, so we run from it. We avoid it. We try not to listen to it. Winners embrace that. They know even the ugly stuff, there's truth there. They say yes to all of it. There's a distinction between no-sayers and yes-sayers, and that is Nietzschean language. And to think about that, we can think about the contrast between Mardi Gras, Fat Tuesday, and the very next day, Ash Wednesday. Fat Tuesday, Mardi Gras, I mean, you can think about whether it's Carnival in Brazil or Mardi Gras festivals and parties in New Orleans. Mardi Gras is a day of excess, right? Wine, women, song, overindulgence, saying yes to all of these drives and compulsions, saying yes to your id. Why? Because tomorrow, Ash Wednesday, is the beginning of the 40 days of Lent, where people are going to give stuff up. I have friends who do the Lenten thing. They give up chocolate. One of my friends gives up chocolate for 40 days. You know what he does on Fat Tuesday? Eats so much chocolate he makes himself sick. Because he knows he's going to say no to it. He can say yes right there because he's going to say no for the next 40 days. Yes saying, no saying. This self-denial, no saying thing. We say no to certain parts of truth, certain aspects of ourselves. It's silly. It's silly, says Nietzsche. In the last analysis, love of the neighbor is always something secondary, partly conventional and arbitrary, illusory in relation to fear of the neighbor. We don't love love our neighbors. We're afraid of our neighbors. And so we've then miscast that or changed that mindset to say, oh no, I just love them so much. That's why I'm saying no to what I want and doing what they want instead. It's because you're afraid. They're bigger, stronger, faster, or really smarter than you are. Because even bigger, faster, stronger, again, he's a social Darwinist, survival of the fittest, you would think typically means big, strong, fast. But what always beats that is smart and creative. The genius always wins. Big, strong, fast may take my stuff until I'm smart and creative enough to invent pointed stick or some other type of projectile. Smart always wins. Cheaters always win because of this. Cheaters are always one step ahead of the rules. Right? They're not getting caught and so on and so forth. We talked before, ring of Gaiji is only illegal if you get caught. So they're always a step ahead or 5 steps ahead. That's why they cheat. They cheat in order to succeed. And really, they may not be bigger, stronger, faster, but they are smarter. They've come up with a creative way to win in spite of the fact they're not bigger, stronger, or faster. That should be applauded, Nietzsche's saying, not derided. Think about heist movies, Ocean's 11 or something along those lines. You're rooting for the bad guys. You're rooting for them to succeed in robbing someone because the plan is just so darn clever. It's so smart. It's so creative. It's so artistic. It's so beautiful that you want them to win. You want them to succeed in robbing someone. Now, sure, I realize that someone is supposed to be a bad guy, and so robbing from a bad guy might be okay, blah, blah, blah. They're thieves. Nonsense of the greatest number. I forget where, I'm trying to find another great quote from Nietzsche here, where he talks about charm and sugar. Oh, well, here again, the highest and strongest drives, when they break out passionately and drive the individual far above the average and the flats of the herd conscience, wreck the self-confidence of the community. Its faith in itself, and it's as if its spine has been snapped. Greats, winners, people who break the rules and break the laws, break the spine of the law and rule followers. Wrecks their self-confidence. They thought they had something they could rely on. Oh wait, rules good as long as I'm doing these things, but wait, here's this new guy on the job who's not following these rules, who's doing his own thing, and he's actually being promoted. He's succeeding more than me. Whoa, hold on a second. What's up with that? But elsewhere, I can't find the quote right now, elsewhere Nietzsche says that all this talk of self-sacrifice and so forth is too much charm and sugar. It's not true. It's not reality. M&M's, Brussels sprouts. Most folks would choose M&M's because it's full of sugar. It tastes better. But you know what's actually healthier and better for you? The Brussels sprouts. The Brussels sprouts are better. But most folks choose the M&M's. What's better is the arrogance, the hubris, the selfishness. But most folks choose the selflessness thing instead. Because it tastes better. It's charm. It's sugar. It's the M&M's. It's not true. We deny ourselves parts of truth. I'll end this particular video with this. Possibly the best modern-day example of a Nietzschean-style artist, Kanye West. Either he's right and he's great, and people will be listening to his music hundreds of years from now, or he's delusional. There is no in-between. He's not average. He's either great or he's garbage. The end. He's too avant-garde. He's too out in front. He's too different from everyone else to be average. Average is what everyone else is doing. Average is everyone else being forgotten. Average is what the haters are. So I'm going to quote just a little bit here from one of his songs entitled Power. Okay? Now, Power, The Will to Power, is a book written by Friedrich Nietzsche. Right? And again, you can kind of see that power, freedom, this ring of Gaijis, right? Forget the traditional values and ethical systems. Let's flip those on their head. Let's value arrogance and selfishness instead of selflessness. This is the first stanza from Power by Kanye. I'm living in that 21st century, doing something mean to it, do it better than anybody you ever seen do it, screams from the haters, got a nice ring to it. I guess every superhero need his theme music. Haters hate because I'm great. To quote his good friend Taylor Swift, haters gonna hate, 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 hate. Player's gonna play, 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 play. You just gotta shake it off, right? You gotta shake off when your friends say you suck at the piano, if you're gonna truly be great. If you're not gonna be great, then yeah, go ahead and give up. It's fine. Be a loser like everybody else. Just be a sheep. Safety in numbers, so on and so forth. That's fine. Just know where you are in life. If you're gonna be great, you're gonna receive some hate. That can be your theme music because you're a superhero. He's doing to the game, he doesn't say the game, but that's what he's talking about. He's doing the 21st century better than anybody else has ever done any century. Doing something mean to it. He's the greatest. He is the greatest. Either he's right or he's wrong. And I'll pick up from there next time.